They said he was nothing. They said he didn't belong. And one man in uniform made sure he never forgot it. But what happens when the tables turn? When the one society laughs at suddenly holds all the power? This is the story of how a homeless man, mocked and mistreated, left an entire city questioning justice itself. It was late afternoon in the heart of the city. The streets buzzed with commuters, the sun casting long golden rays between glass towers. And there, sitting on the cold concrete outside a busy coffee shop, was Marcus. Marcus had been homeless for nearly 3 years. His once neat clothes were now worn and frayed, his shoes barely held together with string, and his face told the story of long nights spent under bridges, fighting against hunger and cold. But Marcus wasn't lazy. He wasn't an addict. He wasn't what people assumed. He had once been an engineer. A man with a stable job, a home and a family who loved him. Until tragedy stripped it all away. That day, Marcus simply sat with a cardboard sign that read, "Hungry. Please help. God bless you." People walked by pretending not to see him. Some glanced with pity, others with judgment. But none stopped. Until the sound of boots echoed on the pavement. A tall police officer, broad shoulders, slick uniform, sunglasses reflecting the busy street, stood over Marcus. His badge gleamed, but his smirk cut deeper than any blade. "Hey buddy," the officer sneered, "you can't sit here. You're scaring the customers." Marcus looked up, weary but calm. "Officer, I'm just sitting. I'm not bothering anyone." But the officer wasn't listening. Instead he chuckled, shaking his head. "You're pathetic. A grown man begging for scraps? Look at you. You'll never be anything more than a street rat." Laughter. Cruel, sharp, echoing. People turned their heads, some whispering, others smirking in agreement. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He could handle hunger, he could handle cold, but humiliation? That was harder. The officer leaned down, close enough for Marcus to smell the coffee on his breath. "Here's a tip, get a job." "Oh wait, nobody would hire you looking like that." He laughed again, then knocked over Marcus's paper cup with his boot, spilling the few coins Marcus had collected onto the dirty sidewalk. The crowd gasped, but no one stepped in. No one said a word. Marcus's hands trembled as he scrambled to pick up the coins. His dignity shattered before strangers who had already judged him guilty of failure. But deep inside, Marcus whispered to himself, one day you'll see who I really am." To understand Marcus's pain, you have to know his story. Years ago, Marcus lived a different life. He was an engineer, brilliant, innovative, respected. His colleagues admired him, his boss trusted him, and his family relied on him. He had a wife, Elena, and a little daughter named Grace. But when the company downsized during an economic crash, Marcus was one of the first to be let go. With bills piling and no job offers, stress consumed him. Then tragedy struck harder. His wife grew sick. Medical bills drained what little savings they had. He sold his car, then his home, just to keep her alive. But it wasn't enough. Elena passed away on a cold winter night. And with her, Marcus's world collapsed. He lost custody of Grace, who was sent to live with relatives in another state. Broken. Jobless. Alone. That's how Marcus ended up on the streets. Not because he was lazy. Not because he was worthless. But because life can break even the strongest. Weeks passed. And every few days Marcus would encounter the same officer. Officer Daniels. Daniels made it his mission to harass Marcus. Sometimes he'd kick his sign. Other times he'd threaten to arrest him for loitering. And every time he laughed. "Still here, loser? Bet your daughter's ashamed of you. You'll die out here and no one will care." Each word, each sneer was a dagger. But Marcus swallowed the pain, refusing to lash out. Because Marcus knew, deep down, that life had a way of circling back. One stormy night, Marcus sat huddled under a bridge, rain pounding against the concrete. His stomach ached with hunger, but his mind replayed Officer Daniels's cruel laughter. Suddenly he heard screeching tires. Then a crash. Marcus ran toward the sound, his instincts taking over. A car had slammed into a tree, smoke curling from the hood. The driver's side door was jammed shut. Inside, coughing, struggling, was Officer Daniels. For a split second, Marcus froze. The man who had mocked him, humiliated him, stood inches away from death. And Marcus had a choice. He could walk away. Let karma do the work. But something inside him, something stronger than anger, moved his feet. Marcus pulled at the twisted metal, ignoring the heat of the smoke, the pain tearing through his arms. He yanked until the door creaked open. Then, grabbing Daniels by the collar, He dragged him out seconds before the car burst into flames. Daniels lay on the ground, gasping, staring up at the man he once called worthless. Marcus looked him in the eye and said quietly, "Never judge a man by where he is. Judge him by what he does." The story should have ended there. Gratitude, respect, a new beginning. But Daniels wasn't the kind of man who accepted humility easily. The next day, when the story reached the local news, Daniels twisted it. He told reporters he had pulled himself out of the wreck, that Marcus had only been a bystander. The city praised him as a hero. Medals, recognition, applause. And Marcus? Still invisible. Still mocked. But fate wasn't done writing. Because among the crowd watching that news report was someone unexpected. A woman, with sharp eyes. A reporter. She had been filming nearby the night of the crash. Her camera caught everything. Marcus risking his life, Daniels dragged from the car, Marcus's words echoing in the night. And now the truth was about to come out. At a city ceremony, Daniels stood on stage, chest puffed, medal shining. The mayor shook his hand, praising his bravery. The crowd clapped. Cameras flashed. Then the reporter stepped forward. "Excuse me," she called, her voice steady. "I have footage that says otherwise." Gasps rippled through the crowd as the screen behind the stage flickered to life. There was the video. Daniels trapped. Marcus saving him. Marcus's words. "Never judge a man by where he is. Judge him by what he does." Silence. Then whispers. Then outrage. All eyes turned, not to Daniels, but to Marcus, who stood quietly at the back, his ragged clothes contrasting the glittering stage. The mayor frowned. "Officer Daniels, care to explain?" Daniels stammered. His confidence cracked. His arrogance crumbled. For the first time he looked small. The crowd erupted, some booing, others chanting Marcus's name. In that moment the power shifted. The homeless man who had been laughed at became the symbol of dignity. The department launched an investigation. Daniels was suspended, stripped of his medal, and faced charges for falsifying a public statement. But Marcus? He became a local hero. Community members reached out, offering him food, clothing, shelter. A non-profit offered him a job as a safety inspector, using his engineering background. The same people who once walked past him now stopped to shake his hand. And for the first time in years, Marcus slept in a warm bed. But more importantly, he regained hope. Hope that maybe one day he could rebuild his life. Hope that maybe he could find his daughter again. But just when Marcus thought life was turning around, something darker began to stir. One night, as he walked home from his new job, he noticed a car following him slowly. The window rolled down. Inside was Officer Daniels, eyes cold, jaw clenched. No longer in uniform. No badge. Just raw hatred. "You think you've won?" Daniels hissed. "You humiliated me. You ruined my career. And trust me, I'm not done with you." The car sped off into the night, leaving Marcus frozen on the sidewalk, the echo of revenge hanging heavy in the air. Marcus whispered to himself, heart pounding. "This isn't over, it's just beginning." And that is where we leave Marcus. A man once broken, now rising. A man mocked for his weakness, now feared for his strength. But with enemies lurking in the shadows, will he survive what comes next? When Marcus thought his nightmare was over, it had only just begun. Because the man he saved, the very man who mocked and humiliated him, wouldn't forgive. And when pride turns to vengeance, lives can be destroyed. This is Marcus's story, where justice collides with corruption, and one man's courage is tested against an entire system. Marcus walked faster, his breath visible in the cold night air. The sound of Daniels's car still echoed in his ears, his words replaying like a curse. "You ruined my career. I'm not done with you." The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows that stretched like claws. Marcus knew men like Daniels. They didn't let go. They didn't forgive. For the first time since being lifted from homelessness, Marcus felt fear claw at his chest again. Not fear of poverty, not fear of hunger, but fear of revenge. Days turned into weeks. Outwardly, Marcus's life seemed to be improving. The nonprofit gave him steady work as a safety inspector. He used his engineering skills to check building structures and ensure compliance. He was good at it, very good. His reports were detailed, his eye for flaws unmatched. Co-workers respected him. Some even admired him for the viral video that had exposed Daniels. But at night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Every sound outside his window made him flinch. Every dark alley felt like a trap, because Daniels was still out there, watching, waiting. It happened one evening after Marcus locked up at work. On his desk, left where only he would see it, was a photograph. A picture of his daughter, Grace. On the back in red ink were the words, "You don't deserve her. Stay in your lane, or else." Marcus's heart stopped. His hands shook as he clutched the photo. Grace was the one thing keeping him alive, the one reason he fought to stand again. To think Daniels had reached into that part of his life was unbearable. He called Grace's relatives immediately, voice trembling. "Is Grace safe? Please just tell me she's safe." They assured him she was fine. But Marcus knew. Daniels was sending a message. This wasn't about humiliation anymore. It was personal. Marcus went to the police. He showed them the photo, explained Daniels' threats. But the officer at the desk shook his head. "Without proof Daniels left this, there's nothing we can do." Marcus's voice rose. "He's a danger. He's obsessed. You're waiting until something happens?" But the officer only sighed. "Look, Daniels has friends here. Powerful ones. My advice? Keep your head down." Marcus walked out, fury boiling inside him. Even the system meant to protect was shielding Daniels. He was alone. That night, Marcus heard a knock at his apartment door. He opened it to see a woman. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, steady stance. She introduced herself. "My name is Detective Amaka James. I heard what happened." Marcus frowned. "Another cop? Why would you care?" She lowered her voice. "Because I know Daniels. And I know what he's capable of. You're not safe. But if we work together, we might bring him down for good." Marcus studied her face, searching for deceit. But her eyes held conviction. For the first time in weeks, Marcus felt a spark of hope. Together, Marcus and Detective James began gathering evidence. They tracked Daniels' movements, spoke to others he had bullied or framed. Slowly, a pattern emerged: abuse of power, falsified reports, intimidation. But Daniels was clever. He never left direct proof. Then came the breakthrough. A street vendor claimed Daniels had tried to extort money from him in exchange for protection. The vendor had secretly recorded the encounter on his phone. Marcus and James listened as Daniels' voice hissed through the speaker. "You pay me, or I'll make sure your little stand never opens again." Marcus clenched his fists. Finally, evidence. But they needed more. Detective James devised a plan. They would lure Daniels into exposing himself, this time on camera with no way out. Marcus hesitated. "He already threatened my daughter. If he finds out..." James cut him off. "That's why we need to end this. Not just for you. For everyone he's hurt." So Marcus agreed. The plan was simple but dangerous. Marcus would confront Daniels in a public place, pushing him to lash out while hidden cameras recorded everything. But nothing about Daniels was simple. It was a rainy afternoon when Marcus spotted him, leaning against his car outside a bar, cigarette dangling from his lips. Marcus walked up, heart pounding. "You won, Daniels. You ruined enough of my life. What more do you want?" Daniels smirked. "I want you gone. Out of this city. You don't belong here. People like you never do." Marcus's voice trembled, but he stood tall. "You're wrong. The city is mine too. And I won't run anymore." Daniels laughed. "You think you've got courage now? You think people care about you? You're nothing. Always will be." The cameras caught every word. But then Daniels stepped closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Your daughter's face. I wonder if she looks like her mother. Shame if something happened to her." Marcus's blood ran cold. His body froze. This was no longer just words. This was a threat against Grace. Marcus swung. His fist connected with Daniels' jaw, sending the officer staggering. The crowd gasped. Cameras caught it all. Daniels, face twisted with rage, lunged, hands around Marcus's throat. And that's when Detective James and two other officers rushed in, prying him off. Daniels' career ended that night. The evidence was undeniable. The threats, the assault, the extortion. Marcus had finally won. Or so he thought. Weeks later, Daniels sat in jail awaiting trial. Marcus began to breathe easier. He even started the process of reconnecting with Grace, writing letters, making calls. But Detective James looked uneasy. One evening, she came to Marcus's apartment. "There's something you need to know," she said quietly. She handed him a file. Inside were reports, cases Daniels had worked on, names of people he had arrested, statements he had written. Except many were false. "Daniels wasn't working alone," James whispered. "There's a network. Officers covering for each other, protecting each other. And now that he's gone down, they'll come after you." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. So this isn't over? James shook her head. No. This is just the beginning. That night, Marcus returned home, the weight of the file heavy in his hands. But as he opened his apartment door, he froze. The lights were on. The window open. On the table was a single object. His daughter's toy teddy bear. Marcus's breath caught. His knees buckled. And next to the bear, scrawled in black marker on the wall, were the words, "You should have walked away." Marcus dropped the file, his heart hammering. Because now it wasn't just Daniel's. It was something bigger. Something darker. And Grace was in danger. A man who rose from the ashes, who defeated his tormentor, only to uncover a storm far greater than he imagined. Because when corruption runs deeper than one man, the battle for justice becomes a war. Will Marcus protect his daughter? Will he survive the forces closing in? Or has he stepped into a fight that no one man can win? Because sometimes, the real enemy doesn't wear one face. It wears many. Marcus thought he had defeated his enemy. But sometimes, the fall of one man awakens an entire machine. And what do you do when the people who control justice become the ones hunting you? This is now where survival means more than dignity, and the cost of truth may be his daughter's life. The teddy bear still sat on Marcus's table. Its button eyes stared back at him, innocent and cruel all at once. And the words scrawled on the wall, "You should have walked away," burned into his mind. Marcus's hands trembled as he dialed Detective Amaka James. She arrived within minutes, her face grim. "This isn't Daniel's," she said, scanning the apartment. "This is bigger. You've touched a network, Marcus. And they don't forgive." Marcus's voice cracked. "They know where my daughter lives. They know everything." James put a steady hand on his shoulder. "Then we expose them. But you need to understand, this will get dangerous. These men are not just dirty cops. They're powerful, connected, and they will fight to bury the truth." Marcus swallowed hard. "I've already lost everything once. I won't lose Grace too." The file James had given Marcus was only the beginning. Together they pored over the documents. Each report led to another name, another thread in a tangled web. Officers who had falsified evidence. Judges who had looked the other way. Business owners who had quietly paid bribes to avoid trouble. And at the center of it all, an organization hidden in plain sight calling themselves the Shield. The Shield was supposed to protect the city. Instead, it protected its own, covering crimes with silence and power. Daniels was just one soldier in a much larger army. Marcus's stomach twisted. He had lived invisible on the streets, while this machine thrived right above him. And now, he had become its enemy. The first warning came 3 nights later. Marcus returned home from work to find his door broken open. Inside, everything was overturned. His clothes shredded. His food smashed. On the floor in red spray paint, one word: rat. Marcus's knees weakened. His enemies weren't hiding anymore. Detective James arrived soon after. "They're trying to scare you. Force you to back down." But Marcus clenched his fists. "No. I've run from enough things in my life. Not this time." But courage would cost him. The next day at work, Marcus's supervisor called him in. "We've received complaints, Marcus. People say you've been causing trouble. Bringing police attention here." Marcus frowned. "That's not true." But the supervisor shook his head. "I'm sorry. We can't keep you on staff." Marcus's heart sank. The Shield was tightening its grip, stripping away the little stability he had rebuilt. As he walked out, co-workers avoided his gaze. Some whispered, others smirked. And one day Marcus was back where he had started, jobless, vulnerable, and this time hunted. That night, Marcus wandered the streets, his thoughts heavy. Then an old man approached him. Thin, with tired eyes and a shaky voice. He looked around nervously before speaking. "I saw what happened to you," he whispered. "You're not the first. They did the same to my son. Framed him. Took his life." Marcus's chest tightened. "Who are you?" The man leaned closer. "Someone who wants justice. If you really want to fight them, there's someone you need to meet. A man named Gideon." And just like that, Marcus had a lead. Gideon lived on the edge of the city, in a small workshop cluttered with old tools and files stacked high. He was a broad-shouldered man in his mid-40s, with weary but steady eyes. When Marcus explained his story, Gideon listened in silence. Finally, Gideon spoke. "You're standing against the storm, son. The Shield has roots everywhere, police, courts, even city council. Daniels was nothing compared to what's coming." Marcus leaned forward. "Then teach me. Show me how to fight them." Gideon studied him, then nodded slowly. Fighting them isn't about fists. It's about truth. And truth requires patience, evidence, and courage. If you want in, there's no turning back. Marcus's voice was firm. I've already lost too much to walk away. Over the weeks that followed, Gideon became Marcus's mentor. He taught him how to gather evidence without being caught, how to read between the lines of official reports, how to track patterns of corruption. For the first time since his wife's death, Marcus felt purpose again. Late at night, Marcus would sit with Gideon, sharing stories of grace. Her smile, her laugh, the way she used to hold his hand on walks. Gideon listened, almost like a father, reminding Marcus of the humanity he fought for. But beneath that bond lay danger. Because the closer Marcus got to the truth, the closer the shield drew their noose. One night, Marcus returned to his apartment to find a package on his doorstep. Inside was a broken picture frame. The photograph inside was of Elena, his late wife. Shards of glass cut his fingers as he held it. Then he saw the note beneath. Next, your daughter. Marcus's scream tore through the night. This wasn't just a threat anymore. It was a countdown. Gideon urged him to move to a safe house. But even there, Marcus felt eyes watching. Then, one evening, while reviewing files with James and Gideon, the power suddenly cut out. The safe house went dark. Windows shattered. Men in masks stormed in. Marcus fought, adrenaline surging, but there were too many. He was thrown to the ground, his head slammed against the floor. Before he blacked out, he heard one chilling sentence from the intruders. Bring him to the Regent. Marcus woke up in a grand, dimly lit room. Velvet curtains. A marble desk. Across from him sat a man in a tailored suit, his face calm, almost amused. You've been very troublesome, Mr. Marcus, the man said smoothly. You've poked your nose where it doesn't belong. Daniels was a pawn. But me? He leaned forward, eyes glinting. I am the one who moves the pieces. Marcus's throat tightened. He was face to face with the leader of the Shield. The man smiled faintly. And now you're going to make a choice. Cooperate, or your daughter disappears forever. The camera of fate froze on Marcus's trembling face. Would he fight? Would he break? Or would he risk everything to protect Grace? A father cornered, a truth-teller trapped in the jaws of a machine bigger than himself. Because sometimes the enemy isn't the man who laughs in your face. It's the one who smiles as he tightens the chains. Will Marcus find the strength to fight the Regent? Or will the Shield finally crush him once and for all? It's taken at a price. Watch out for part 2 to continue with this story.